You mentioned some of the issues which are important to you. You also have the reality of a governor who won at 62%. Right now, the latest polling has 57% not in favor of a recall. While you've identified the issues, how difficult is that going to be to unelect Governor Newsom?
Well, I'd say that first of all, when you look at the polling you cite, which is I think a few months old, you had people before there was any recall date set, when there's not even a lot of awareness that it's going to happen, and you had 40 people right then and there saying, I'm ready to remove him from office now. Now there's been a date set. It's not just some abstract proposition. We're going to have a vote. It's going to be September 14th. And I think that that's really going to focus the public attention on the issues. And what we've seen with respect to this recall is that when people are really paying attention, they tend to want to vote for the recall. The same polling that you're citing showed that the folks who are in favor of the recall are a lot more enthusiastic about going out and voting than the people who are against it, because these are the people who have really seen the connection between the failings of our state government and the deterioration of our quality of life in California. And I think that one of the things that's happened over these last 15 months is that people have gotten a much more direct insight into the way our state government works, and they've seen that corruption is really at the core of a lot of what happens at this building.
Well, that's interesting, because you are the author of a book in which the title is rather interesting. Recall Newsom, The Case Against America's Most Corrupt Governor, by legislator Kevin Kiley. 79% give it 5 stars, by the way, on Amazon.
Right.
So congratulations on that. That's a pretty meaty title for a book, The Nation's Most Corrupt Governor.
Yeah, I've actually seen people who have written, they thought this was hyperbole, maybe I was just sort of your typical puffery that you see in politics, and then they've said, actually no, after looking at it, I think that the claim is absolutely correct. And when I use that sort of superlative most, I think that is actually borne out in the evidence, in the data. Let's look at the issue of the closure of schools, for example. We know that Gavin Newsom's biggest campaign funder is the California Teachers Association. The teachers unions, they basically underwrote his rise to power. We also know California has been 50th out of 50 in terms of getting kids back to school, has defied all of the public health experts, defied all of the child welfare organizations, defied what every other state did. All 49 other states got their kids back to school faster. And, it doesn't, take any great level of analysis to connect those dots. And that's the way, what we see, that's the connection we see around all facets of policymaking out of this governor's office, is that it serves the special interests that have put him in that office rather than serving the public interest and the people of California.
Do you ever pass him in the hallway? He knows who you are. What is that like? Does it matter? Is that uncomfortable? I mean, obviously you're probably, if not his most outspoken critic, one of them.
Well, actually, he's my constituent as well. He lives in my district. However, I will say this, I don't have a personal relationship with him. Jerry Brown, on the other hand, I would see him fairly regularly. I would talk to him, and that's one of the criticisms of this governor from the beginning of his tenure, is he has simply sort of neglected to build relationships with people on either side of the aisle in the legislature.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think that he sees the legislative process perhaps as an encumbrance, as we've seen over the last 15 months, where he declared a state of emergency, gives him all of the powers of the legislature for himself.
Do you consider him to be aloof?
I don't know if, I don't know if I use that word or not. I mean, I think that that's
entitled.
It's more of a personal characteristic, I suppose. And I try to sort of focus my attention on his actual job performance. But I will tell you this, I have people in the governor's party who are legislators who come to me when they want to sort of vent about the governor, because there's a lot of discontent on both sides with a lot of what he has done, and in particular the way he used the COVID-19 state of emergency to basically shut down the legislative process and to claim that he, as the governor, could simply rule the state one pen stroke at a time. There were public statements to that effect by members of the legislature. So I think that is a reflection of the completely bipartisan nature of the movement that we are seeing. When you look at who signed the recall petition, it wasn't just one party. You had hundreds of thousands of Democrats, independents, Bernie-crats, because these are really not partisan issues in the slightest. When you look at the fact that people had to have their kids out of school for well over a year for no good reason, going against public health guidance, when you look at the fact that we had the 50th out of 50, the worst lockdowns of any state in the country, leading to the second highest unemployment throughout the pandemic. And, I'm bringing up examples of what's happened over these last 15 months, but it's really just a reflection of the broader failures of California politics, just kind of taken to the next level, the result has been that for many years, California has been declining as a state, but over the last year, it sort of went into this total free fall. This last year, we actually lost population for the first time in California history. 170 years, California's population grew. This last year, we lost 182,000 people on balance, on net.
You mentioned the people who signed the recall, 1.7 million people, well above the threshold needed for valid signatures. The governor on The View, when he went on, he said that the genesis and the origin of the recall were QAnon people, conspiracy theorists, and all that. What did that say to the people who had signed the recall petition that were not part of any type of Proud Boys or anything like that? What did that say to them?
Yeah, it's incredibly offensive and disrespectful to the right of those folks to participate in our democracy. And I think that is just so revealing, that the way that Gavin Newsom and those around him have responded to the recall is not by trying to actually govern the state better, but by trying to demonize those who are behind it, and indeed by trying to mess with the recall process. And so when you have the governor go out and make these wild claims about groups I've never even heard of, he seems very familiar with them, I've never heard of these groups, and say that this is what the recall is about, it is a complete affront to the right to self-determination that is every American's birthright. And I think it just underscores the insularity of our political class, that we have a political class here in Sacramento that tries to shut out the voice of the people in every way possible. I mean, this building was literally barricaded until just a couple weeks ago. And in my 5 years in the legislature, I've seen it time and time again, that we have a Capitol that is run by a political class that serves special interests and tries to exclude the public from the process in every way possible.
Well, you mentioned the barricades, and I asked Doug Ossie this question too. How much of a trailer do you hook to the Trump truck here? I mean, are you not walking a fine line? You are a Republican. There are many of your constituents and Republicans in the state that are very much into the former president. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I mean, the beauty of the recall is that we have one election on the ballot. In your typical race, you have how many elections? A lot. You have state, local, federal, and so all of these issues tend to get mixed up, which is the way that Gavin Newsom and those who are in power and the special interests at this Capitol like it, because it shields them from accountability. It's sort of, it's really hard to draw the link between conditions in your community and in your life and what happens at this one particular level of government. But I think that over the course of the last year, as I was saying earlier, that connection has really been drawn, and a recall vote allows us to, as a state, to fix our attention directly on the role that the state plays and that the governor plays in the deteriorating conditions in California and really the disappearance of the California dream for a lot of people. So, the governor will try to bring in, national politics. He'll try to nationalize it. He'll try to make this a partisan thing. It's not going to work because, people are going to be able to look at his performance and the issues for what they are without all of this other confusion.
So I can't get you to say then that there are certain things you liked about the former president, certain things you don't like, that you're not all in on one thing and you've picked and choose. And I think people would probably want to know where you stand on the former president.
I think it's just not a relevant issue as far as this campaign goes. The governor is going to try to make it about anything other than his performance and his time in office. And so I'm just not going to play that game. We're going to focus, our campaign on how we can improve life in California.
I think people might find that refreshing, that we go forward and not back.
Yeah.
The current governor has said in Politico a couple of years ago that the Republican Party is destined for the waste bin of history. You being in your mid-30s and a Republican, some might say you're the future of the Republican Party in this state. Is the Republican Party, particularly in this state, destined for the waste bin of history?
I don't think so, but it is, a typical sort of Gavin Newsom comment, He is easily the most partisan governor in the United States. He is constantly out just making disparaging comments and demonizing people of the other party. He said after the last election, as Joe Biden went on TV to call to bring the country together, Newsom was talking about how many times Republicans have lost the electoral vote. He's the last couple years, tweeted dozens of times these just kind of really out there insults to people like Mitch McConnell, national figures, has nothing to do with California. And so I think that's actually one of the other failings of his, is that he has really tried to divide in whatever way he can. And I want to work towards a new mode of politics here that actually brings people together by focusing on finding solutions to our problems, which in California, again, they're not of a partisan nature. The fact that we have the highest poverty in the country, the widest achievement gap in our schools, that we have roads that are falling apart, and the just soaring cost of living that's sending people out of state. People of every party are looking for common sense solutions to those problems. They're not looking for partisan warfare.
Okay, it's the day of the election, it's the night of, it's the day after, September 15th. You've won. You're the new governor. What does Kevin Kiley do? Day one, what are you going to tell the people that's going to be different? What's the change going to be?
Well, we have to get to work immediately because it's a truncated term. You don't get a full 4 years in a recall, so you really need to get moving very quickly. But the first thing I'd say is that the era of corruption is over. I think a change in our political culture is maybe the most important thing of all. I'm the only legislator that doesn't expect Sept funding from special interest groups. Every other legislator gets hundreds of thousands of dollars from them. They're called the third house. They are lobbyists. They have offices all around where we're sitting right now. Gavin Newsom has gotten tens of millions of dollars from them in his races, and that's why our state capital and the policymaking process has been captured by special interest groups. And so I think having a new governor who is elected completely with the support of citizens, who is a citizen-backed governor, that will affect a monumental change in our political culture. But in terms of actually, getting to work on solutions to California's problems, I think that what I would want to do is call a special session of the legislature immediately to tackle some of the biggest issues we face. For example, education reform, or the cost of living, the affordability crisis in California, particularly around housing. Because the nice thing, or maybe the advantageous thing about the timing of this recall election, is that there will be another election in 2022. And so if the legislature decides to remain mired in the era of corruption, refuses to actually work with the new governor to find solutions to move California forward, then they'll face accountability themselves in the following year's election.